Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, Shekhar.
Good afternoon, Shekhar.
Good afternoon. So hope you enjoyed the sessions so far for the day. And this is the last part of this today's summit, which will discuss on the topic manufacturing excellence post-lockdown. So with COVID-19 evolving at a very unprecedented speed and scale, the automotive manufacturing companies are grappling with its immediate impact as both their production and supply chain operations are being disrupted. And that's not just in India, but all over the world. And it's not their suppliers' own operations, but also their suppliers tier 1, tier 2, as well as their customers. They're also facing the same challenges. So this is having an exponential effect down the whole supplier network, hitting automotive companies with a big lag. And with the economic uncertainty along with this COVID-19 pandemic, it has further added a layer of complexity to the challenging environment. So in this scenario, it becomes important to understand what should the industry do to achieve resilience and develop immunity against the market uncertainties in future, and what role will manufacturing excellence play in it. So in this context, we are organizing this panel discussion today, where the industry veterans would be deliberating on the new normal in the current scenario, the significance of the manufacturing excellence now, next, and beyond, the role of emerging technologies such as digitalization going forward, the skill upgradation and training required, and the attributes of a winning plan for navigating the industry post-pandemic. So there comes the first question. I will ask to Mr. Sudhir Gurtu. So there has been a lot of talks on new normal and how to align our operations with the new normal. So what is this new normal exactly for the automotive manufacturers and suppliers today?
Hi, Shekhar. Good to be on this panel. Interesting discussions so far.
Yes, our pleasure.
Yeah, so good initiative. The new normal, actually, to me, it's yet to be seen what is the new normal. I know everyone is guessing, they're defining the new normal. Honestly, I don't see it yet. It's too still distant, still some months away. Why I say that is, so there are so many elements to a manufacturing world. You start from the product, now the product, if you go back 1 year, there's so many launches being announced by automotive.
True.
Do you hear of any? None. And just now, I think Albert was sharing how they're trying to come down on the trim levels, and US, they're trying to get rid of many models and blah, blah. So it's simplifying the world, let's say. So that's on the product. If you see the environment, the new normal is changing every day. Sanitization, social distancing. You just heard all the Honda guys speak about that. And
Right.
so the normal is yet to be, we are yet to reach there. If you look at supply chain or inventory systems, they're all growing through a fluid change, which means you have to have a micromanager inventory. Earlier, you could stock it up because the cars will sell. Today, the guys don't know how many will sell, if even half of what they are. So I was talking to this Maruti head of one of the senior guys in Maruti. He says, I can make 6,000-7,000 a day, but then get me the customers.
True.
So there's the normal. The normal can only.
But even then, the Maruti sold about 18,000 vehicles in the month of May.
True, but that's peanuts if you see statistics.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It might be a great number for say another company, which I won't name, a smaller company. But then for Maruti, it's nowhere close to even recovering.
That's true.
Part of their overheads, what they are.
Correct.
We all know that. So new normal, I guess, is still away. Look at technology. Someone mentioned the electrical world. EV is again shifting from maybe somewhere to China, and I don't know where the lithium or the ores or the battery content is really who's buying the mines behind as we talk. So the normals are shifting fast. So honestly, the new normal, to me, I don't think I would like to define it today. Is what I have to say.
Okay.
I hope it helps.
Mr. Larry, would you like to add your inputs on this about the new normal?
I think Sudhir is a huge veteran in the industry and would know very well. And I wouldn't want to, kind of go against the fact. And in fact, it's true because we were talking about disruption in the industry before even COVID set in, and we were talking
Right.
about, connected vehicles, shared mobility, and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. And now we think that that was not even a disruption, that was something else, and now we are probably in a disrupted mode. And
Correct,
once
correct.
this
This.
gets over, and
Mhm.
you have the full impact of the economic changes that are going to happen, as well as the geopolitical changes, and the focus on
Mhm.
what our prime minister has talked about, an Atmanirbhar Bharat. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of global leaders are today talking about that self-sufficiency and being on your own kind of a
Mhm.
situation. So all of those will add to a tremendous complexity about what
Mhm.
this new normal is going to be. So it's
Right.
not only multi-dimension. I think it's an n dimension with end
Mhm.
almost tending towards infinity in terms of what
Mhm.
are the different vectors that are kind of working in this. And we work in the skill space, and it's a tough game in terms of you have on one hand people who are already skilled in certain domains, and you're not too sure whether that's going to continue. You want to train people in new skills, but you don't
Mhm.
really know what those new skills will be required, and you are in a
Right.
quandary in terms of trying to figure
Mhm.
out what. But only thing I can say is that the only way to survive this is keep learning and keep adapting to the
True.
situation as
Mhm.
it unfolds. So that's probably a sense of a new normal, that you
Mhm.
have to be like adaptable on your,
Right.
and keep learning, keep understanding new things as it unfolds, and respond to it.
Mhm. It's like basically the adapting to the change
Yeah,
as fast
and a
as
change which is
possible.
coming
Mhm.
in a very, very unpredictable manner, because a lot of time
Mhm.
we forecast change based on historical data, but here
Correct.
that won't help. So we don't know
Mhm.
how to predict
That's
sort of
true.
thing, you know.
Mhm.
So it's like very unforeseen kind of a situation.
Mhm.
So which is where I think you have to completely be adaptable to a
Mhm.
change which you can't predict, or you
Right.
can't have
Mhm.
of the of the trajectory of the change.
Mhm. Correct. Correct. Yeah, Mr. Manik, I will come to you now. So, how can this Indian automotive manufacturing organizations be better prepared while restarting the manufacturing operations? That too, with the constraint of the social distancing, then the number of people on the job, or safety norms, then supply chain disruptions, and most importantly, the cost reduction pressures.
So, thanks, Shekhar, and good evening once again, everybody.
Good evening.
Nice to have you all, and nice to be as a part of this panel. So, I was hearing the conversations on the new normal, and I think
Mhm.
both the responses were very apt. Coming to what you just now mentioned, uh, it's and in fact, I also got an opportunity to sit in the presentation that Honda was sharing.
Mhm.
I think situation is really uncertain. However, the good thing which I and we all found is that there were very timely guidelines from the government on some of these
Mhm.
things. I think
Correct.
that was not probably expected when all these things started. There
Mhm.
were very standard guidelines in terms of how to restart your operations, and some of the guidelines were centrally coordinated by the central government and health ministry,
Mhm.
and some of the guidelines of course were above that from a state level or a district level perspective.
Correct.
So when we all started getting ready for these things, there were certain key things which we took care, and I think many of the OEMs probably would have done the same, but that
Mhm.
helped. The thing was, before even starting, how well we were able to engage our employees. And when I say employees, it is not just the staff, it is the
Mhm.
last level of the employee in the chain, which means the
Mhm.
person on the floor, whether he is our associate, a contract person. How we were
Mhm.
engaging, obviously we were also required to report out their daily health status, which means
Right. Mhm.
which means the supervisor or the next in the chain, his or her team manager, or was required to daily make a call,
Mhm.
ask his her health, their family members' health, and we were also having a digital app where we have to upload that. So every day we used to get a status. Everything is okay, not okay, somebody is requiring any help. So I think that already kept us going, even if the plant was off, operations were off, but the engagement was there. We actually had our daily work meetings, we call DWM, daily work management meetings on call, virtual meetings with the shop floor, like a morning meeting, you know. So associates were all on the call, on phone, and the team leader is doing the meeting, just like that. So maybe that is new normal. Maybe that was new normal, which got, you know, birth at that time, knowingly or unknowingly. Then came the phase like April 3rd week when we, you know, started resuming our operations. And when we say resuming our operations, it is to get our plant ready for the guidelines which were floated on. So to have multiple disinfectant tunnels, to have temperature scanners for each and every visitor or an employee, to have social distancing in the bus, to have social distancing in the canteen, arrangement and rearrangement of chairs and tables in the canteen. So we saw in the presentation for Honda, similar like washrooms, even punching clock, because at the end of the shift and the start of the shift, you will find a queue in the punching clock, right? Out. So even punching clock, we made sure it is not finger punching, biometrics are removed, it is all face recognition punching, so you don't have to touch, and there is a distance to be maintained while you are punching, which means your load on the punching changes. So we also made sure every shop leaves at a span of 5 minutes. So there were some shops which will leave a bit early, maybe 15 minutes early, so that you are able to, you know, these are the changes which which were required to be adapted. And I think everyone did well to plan that out, and then slowly start ramping up operations with the guidelines of 30-35% attendance and all. That's how we tried to start and resume.
Okay. So do you still see the same guidelines, or say 30-35% attendance, or whatever systems or practices you are following in the coming months as well, and how long?
No, I think the good thing is the government and the district to district are slowly opening up. So they have now, you know, revised the guidelines. They have allowed, one thing is social distancing has to be maintained, sanitization has to be maintained, temperature scanning has to be maintained, mask has to be a must for everybody in the plant. And irrespective of anybody in the plant, mask has to be there. And then when you are traveling by your own vehicle, you cannot be more than 2+1 if you are traveling back. So those things are still there. But the number of people who are now coming are close to 60%. So, but yet maintaining these norms.
Okay. Correct.
So that's how we are approaching.
Okay. So in this scenario, I will ask this question to Mr. Lahiri now. What is the significance of manufacturing excellence today, and how will the role of manufacturing excellence change now, next, and beyond? And how to achieve and sustain the excellence in manufacturing operations going forward?
So I think manufacturing excellence is very critical, and manufacturing excellence will be required, in order for us to look at the whole new normal that we talked about in terms of self-reliance and looking at, a lot of import substitution, trying to make sense about how do we do those things in our country, given all the challenges of the raw materials, etc., that will be there. But how do we create more value addition within the country is probably a new focus that will have to come into manufacturing, and which will also involve, I think in our automotive industry, as far as the OEMs are concerned and probably the tier 1 suppliers are concerned, there's a significant amount of automation that has already been there. But how do we make it deeper, and how can we even take it wider in terms of automating? Because you will need social distancing for some time to come. And therefore, you can't have processes which require a lot of labor force working very close to each other. And therefore, you will need to look at some amount of automation coming in, and probably some amount of maybe low-cost robotization or whatever you want to call it, where probably the machines and the workers will work together to produce the work that was probably being done by 4 or 5 laborers being close to together. So a lot of digital intervention and automation, like Mr. Manish talked about, a simple thing like a attendance system, for instance, no touch or completely automated link. So probably biometric was anyway happening in some cases, but there were still a lot of cases where probably a physical manual punching, signing, etc. was happening. So a lot of them will look at our organization, for instance, we moved into a smartphone app-based, attendance system, for instance. So these are solutions which will come up, which is also good from one other perspective, is that it can breed a lot of startup in terms of even on the manufacturing space, because there would be a lot of requirements in terms of software integration, certain amount of electronic assembly, all of those areas where the need will be there for going local in terms of being shortening the supply chain to that extent in terms of having assembly points much closer. So I think those are some of the longer term implications, but in the short term, surely I think everybody will start thinking about this process, and they will have to draw out their own plans as to how they want to achieve it in their respective organizations and their ecosystem.
Correct. Yeah, Mr. Manish, since you have been involved in this manufacturing operations for a long time, so what is your take on this significance of manufacturing excellence going forward?
I think, more you say it is never enough. Forget COVID. Yes, COVID or no COVID, manufacturing excellence needs to grow.
Correct. But its role might change.
Yes, there will be changes. Industry 4.0 may become, a revised version of 4.0 or 5.0 or 4.9. That is all okay. But this is one topic which is going to be there, and it is going to increase in the coming days. That doesn't mean, at least in my personal view, that doesn't mean we are talking about replacing some of the, workforce or replacing some of the, manual work. No, that is not the idea. The idea is how can we have a collaborative or a joint strategy where excellence or a manufacturing excellence can further aid and further support in accelerating our efforts towards, let's say, going to the next levels of excellence. Now, in this scenario, I'll just touch upon a couple of things that have come up. Of course, converting biometric into face recognition punching is a very small, let's say, thing that was required. That was anyway required. It is that. But we have a lot of things which are, lined up in terms of future products development. And there are a lot of interactions that were happening with our home rooms, with our other overseas plants, where people used to travel from other plants, other countries. We used to go to other countries, or let's say our teams used to go. All those are now not to happen. At least for next few months, traveling is not happening. So that required a need to use some of the technological platforms. And we actually have come up now with, virtual bids, where we have installed cameras, where we are building, let's say, a prototype vehicle here, and the person or the, colleagues in the other countries are able to actually view that live stream. They can give their inputs. They can suggest some of the changes. Same is true for some of the overseas equipment manufacturers. Before COVID, we had actually ordered some of the equipments for our new line setup, and some of them from outside India, some of them from within India. Both cases, people are not able to travel. Equipments have come, how to install. So even those are getting virtually live stream, and we have actually installed and commissioned on our own. What has happened is, because of this technological help, our own people are now getting multi-skilled. Our own teams are getting now, enhanced in terms of their capability, which is actually an outcome of some of these things. So, and that's again, I would say, is the new normal. Being a specialized in one operation was probably a days of the past. Now, how much people are multi-skilled? Because for sure 100% attendance is not going to happen in future years,
Correct.
right? So people will come by rotation.
Mhm.
So the more the person is able to multi-hat or multitask or multi-skill, the more enriched will his or her value be. So I
Okay.
think that's my take on manufacturing itself.
Okay. Yeah, since you mentioned about Industry 4.0 and the digitalization, so next question I will ask to Dr. Chatterjee. So, what would be the role of the emerging technologies such as digitalization, including contactless manufacturing or simulation, IoT, etc., going forward in continuing the business with the same efficiency and profitability as earlier? And is there will there be any change in the approach towards this deployment of these advanced technologies in the current situation?
Okay. So related to this digitization, I would like to say that there are three parts to an organization. One is on the personal part of the employee, where a lot of these digital interventions have come up, and some of it will be short term, but many of these will be long term as well. So, for example, people have started adopting work from home culture.
True.
Then virtual meetings, people have started adapting to that. E-learning cannot be done for blue collar workforce, but this myth is now gone with this COVID coming up in this pandemic, because it proved that all our even blue collar employees are able to do a Teams meeting for e-learning through their mobile phones, irrespective of the age, right? So these things are coming as a very normal thing from a personal front. Now, coming back to the shop floor part, again, there are two parts to that. One is the in-house manufacturing. The other one is the logistics, which some of the panelists have already talked about. So when you talk of the manufacturing, I think contactless becomes very important because if you see in a manufacturing scenario, there are a lot of contacts, human touches are happening at various points. So basically, for example, a part moving from one machine to another, it is being touched by several operators who are handling that particular machine, or even the HMI which is there in the machine, different operator coming in different shifts are touching the same HMI machine. So really there are a lot of human touch points which can get eliminated with technology intervention and which will be necessary. So for example, robots or cobots, the robots which can work with human being, are some parts of it which can actually drastically reduce the contact for the parts movement from one place to another, or for some of the machining which needs to take place. So that's one intervention which can come up. The other can be related to, let's say, your augmented reality coupled with IoT. For example, it can help you in remote monitoring and remote scheduling, as well as remote diagnostics. So people can take some decisions without being there, being far away, as Mr. Manik explained right now, they are doing in some of the aspects. But augmented reality actually can further add to that as well. Then there are a lot of, for example, wearables which have come up. Now, these wearables can actually convert voice to text. And by giving a command, actually you can give a command to a machine by which the ones which I said that HMI is being touched by various operators. Actually, you can just eliminate that and make it contactless. Similarly, let's say you can do a lot of barcode scanning and other things so that everybody need not use the same barcode scanner. And if you really look at all of these aspects, the digital technology is coming up very cheap. The cost is coming down. Many of these actually can lead to around 8 to 10% of capital investment reduction for the organization. So these are some of the things which can be taken care in the manufacturing part uh, on it. Now coming to the logistics, where I think Dr. Wilfred also in the last presentation he mentioned that more of regionalization will take place, and I think from regionalization the next step might be more of localization also, which has to be there, because as we saw in the pandemic situation itself, the logistics got impacted a big way. And especially in the manufacturing or in automotive industry, you have a lot of dependency on the ecosystem, and the ecosystem has to be there localized, which you can actually benefit. So technologies as additive manufacturing and other things will gain predominance. Right now I think it's in a nascent stage, and they are working on the mass production of additive manufacturing. But I think once those things come up, then these things will become localized from a supplier end also, which can actually help to address some of the logistics issues what we have today through some of the digital interventions.
Okay. Yeah, Mr.
Now, in
Guttu.
terms of
Yeah.
deployment,
Yeah, about the deployment you were talking about.
yeah, for the deployment, I was just saying that we need to look into probably in chunks. We need to identify because every company is through a financial crisis right now.
Correct. There is a heavy cost pressure.
Yeah, the heavy cost pressure on every organization. So we have to be very selective where to do the automation, how to do the automation. Probably you just saying that, okay, which all are the high business benefits and low complexity ones. And that is something what I do first and then move to the other sectors.
Right.
So probably take such type of an approach might be helpful for the organization, that you do in chunks in the critical areas, and the ones which gives you more ROI, you invest in that, and then you reinvest the returns what comes up to cover up the next thing. The only thing
Yeah,
what needs to be important is that you do it on a continual basis. That will
correct.
be the most important.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, very, very, very well practical thought on that. So, Mr. Guttu, you have been working with the manufacturing organizations, providing your services to them. So, what is your take on the approach to these new technologies like automation or digital technologies?
A good question. Yes. See, a lot of companies are already invested and investing. Like, let's say we are working with Skoda to help set up some new model setups there. So they're already running in that. So they're trying to finish it off early and continue with the launches. But the others I notice are just waiting for the so-called new normal to set in, to be defined. Because as you heard the other speakers, the trim levels coming down, the models coming down, the launches coming down. There's a nervousness in the market and with the OEMs as well. So most OEMs are actually very nervous, but of course they have to keep a brave face and show nothing's happening, all is well. But when they speak heart to heart, one to one, what I sense is the things are gloomy for at least 6 to 12 months. That's the least I'm saying. That's industry guys, what they're saying. Nothing is going to change for anywhere from 6 to 12 months. It could be more as well. And I hope it's less, understanding the need for India, the need to take on China, not just on the border, but technologically as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And grab some manufacturing from China to us. So I hope all that happens. But really the picture is not so great as I would want it to be. So on the technology front as well, people are really not spending on where they need to, but they're talking. So everyone will talk of 3D manufacturing, blah, blah. But when you say, hey, how much have you spent or have you committed some funds to actual 3D printing? He'll say, yeah, I'm almost done, blah, blah. And that's where I sum up the scenario. It's a challenge ahead. Just for 6 to 12 months. Thereafter, I'm sure we'll be back to where we were.
Right. Yeah, then comes the important question that Mr. Larry can answer this. This transition to new normal in manufacturing plants that will require both the manufacturing leaders as well as the frontline teams to develop new capabilities and skills, as you mentioned in your earlier thoughts. So, how to take care of this training and skill development or skill upgradation, I can say, in the current scenario, so as to accelerate this capability building process and adjust the operations in real time with the required productivity levels?
Yeah, so I think we look at the whole skilling thing in three buckets, so to say. One is about the new workforce that are planning to get into the new workforce that will get into the industry. The second is people who are at the early part of their career and need to look at how they want to map out the rest of their long career that lies ahead. And the third is someone, let's say, at the middle to slightly senior level at a leadership role where they're managing people, supervising people, and looking at this. So I think the biggest focus for us is in terms of the first two segments as the ASDC, where we're looking at new workforce that is trying to get in. I think there is a very strong apprenticeship program that had already been floated by the government of India, which is and the Apprenticeship Act has undergone a significant change, allows for a lot of flexibility, and this is something which I think can be used by various organizations in a very significant way to be able to train people, not only in the traditional manufacturing roles that one was used to whenever somebody used to talk about apprenticeship in India, but across any kind of job roles that are there. And there is a significant support and incentivization from the government that is also happening. And I think, you need to increase the pull. One of the challenges of adoption of whether you call it Industry 4.0 or whatever, in terms of newer technologies, the challenge is that the cost of implementing that also goes up significantly because you don't have enough supply of trained manpower. Therefore, the kind of manpower that you would need to kind of run it will typically be more expensive, and which also adds to the cost in addition to the technology cost itself or the equipment hardware cost itself. So I think, if I look at some of our success stories, relative success stories in India in terms of the industries where we've done well, let's say an IT industry or an ITES industry or even an apparel industry, where I think India has had moved into a leadership role. I think the one common thread, if I look into deep down into what has happened in those industries, I think has been a tremendous amount of trained manpower available in those kind of industries. Also, the industry players significantly investing in terms of training. And I think OEMs have, in the automotive industry, already invest a lot of their resources into training. But I think this needs to be slightly more broad-based, and some of the larger tier 1 manufacturers or even some of the tier 2 manufacturers and even the larger dealerships should actually take up the ownership of getting in people in an apprenticeship format, training them, and moving them out for the larger, smaller organizations where we talk about MSMEs, etc., who may not have the necessary bandwidth to offer those training. So today, I think OEMs spend a lot of their energy in terms of ensuring that they have enough training done for their dealership network or for their tier 1 supplier network. But how can we make it deeper down? And even some of the larger dealerships are actually fairly large in this country, auto dealerships, and they would have the bandwidth and the capability to do some of these things. And I think if they get involved also, I think the scale at which we can prepare manpower, and not only can we serve our country, we can serve across the world. I mean, the Prime Minister today has a vision that India needs to be the skill capital of the world. And we can be the skill capital of the world because we have the young population. And if we do not take enough interest in deploying them, in the right way, then we are setting ourselves up for another type of disaster and another type of disruption in our whole society as such. So I think that is very, very, very critical for all of us to realize and make sure that we all align into this common goal in terms of skilling our people. And gone are the days where, the engineering degree meant the gateway to success. Most of our engineers today, unfortunately, cannot get even job. They can't work as a worker. Neither can they work as an engineer. So they're stuck. So I think, rather than wasting that much of time, energy, and money behind those kind of engineers, we need to create a battery of or a sea of skilled workers, which can actually take our manufacturing space, including the automotive manufacturing, to a very different level.
Right.
And that can happen, if we remain focused. And this is a good time to kind of focus on that, in terms of doing it, because it's not so costly. Believe me that, to impart skill training with all the money that the government has been putting and has plans to put, there's enough government incentive available for organizations to take support of that and create a pool of skilled workers.
That's true. So that comes to the last question, which I request if each of you can answer it in just a short, so that we'll have some time for the questions from the audience. So I will start with Mr. Manish. So finally, in short, what should be the attributes of a winning plan for navigating the industry post-pandemic? The immediate actionable strategies and the road ahead to turn this disruption into an opportunity for India to emerge as a manufacturing destination for the world. That comes when many of the MNCs are moving out of their manufacturing base from China.
Yeah, first and foremost, obviously our own people. So enhancing their skills, I think there is no substitute to that. Because we can't go out and keep getting new people or new skills.
Yeah, that's true.
That is neither available nor affordable in this scenario. So we have to have a platform where we again use some of the virtual technology to keep enhancing our own skill set from our own with regards to our employee base. So that is first and foremost. That is to just keep ourselves getting ready for our own operations. Now, as you know, for a four-wheeler or a passenger vehicle OEM, it is not just our own people. We have a big chain. So we have to work, or let's say collaborate with our own supplier base, which is our vendor partners. And I'm not even going to tier 2 or tier 3. Let's at least work with our tier 1, which is what we have been doing, tier 1 supply chain and tier 1 vendor partners, because their workforce is further, in that sense, if I call vulnerable, let's say. Some of them may be on contract, some of them may not be even available right now. They might have gone back to their homes.
Right.
So how to handhold them and probably extend our own people's availability to train some of their operations or some of their skill set enhancement. So it's not just building our own skill set, even going to that level. Second, the continuous engagement, because as some of the speakers earlier also said, it is very, very natural for an employee to think about what will happen, to keep speculating. So engaging our own people on a day-to-day basis and at various levels of leadership communication. So the communication has to start from top, then middle level, then so on and so forth at different defined frequencies. And that is what we have been trying to do, to have a very, very normal atmosphere, which finally becomes the new normal. And how to keep engaging our customers, which means first our own dealer partners, because that is also a very key aspect of the whole supply chain, and then the end customer. So even the communications, constant communication for the customers who had shown interest, who had booked our vehicles, we were not able to deliver on time, how to keep a continuous communication to make sure that they are still knowing what is the outlook for their vehicle when they can be delivered. Same for the dealer, same for the vendor. Second foremost thing which we tried to do was how can we at least incrementally play our own role to the COVID frontline warriors. I mean, we have talked about, or rather we have heard a lot of that in media, but
yes,
how we can as an organization or as an individual can support that initiative in our own manner, may it be a small manner. So we engaged with district authorities, hospitals, we engaged with some of the police vans, we sanitized some few thousand police vans, ambulances, and we also had our own kind of tracking if individuals are doing on their own, out of their own capacity. Even that was made up in our own internal communication, highlighted and appreciated. So employees got further motivated, and it has become now like a kind of, I would say, it has gone into DNA. Everybody comes back what he or she has done. So that's on how to manage this current situation. Lastly, you said how to capitalize on the future opportunities. I think by developing this own skill set and getting ready, that's the only way we can, start getting some more self-sufficient in the times to come. So that's how I would see it.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Chatterjee.
Yeah. So I think this pandemic actually opened up a lot of opportunities for Indian manufacturers. So just to keep it short, I'll just mention that we need to focus on 3 focus areas. Number 1 is how to do low cost production. That will be most important.
Yeah.
Number 2 to maintain high and good quality of the product what we produce. And the third thing is commitment to a timely delivery. I think if we are able to crack these three and focus on these three, that can take us a long way.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Gutu.
Yeah, I like the idea Pradeep had give 3 points. So I'll also
Yes.
pick 3 points to summarize to your question, which is how to get there, which is how to, let's even look at shifting industry from China to India, that kind of vision. So the first is what Arindam is into. We need to reskill and multi-skill our people, very critical. So that has to go on.
Right.
But the other two, I believe, has to be somewhere else. One is you have to start delivering more for less. You know, deliver more for less. That means a lot. I mean, there are a lot of points within that if I have to break. But let's say it means you have to change your processes to deliver fast. So how to get there means how to lower your costs so you can get a product cheaper at the end of the day. So deliver more for less, whether it's technology change, whether process change, people change, all that has to be done within the plants, within manufacturing world. And the final third point I have for shifting support from say China to India kind of story is more at the OEM or the owners level. Because we Indians are happy with small incremental growth. Someone will offer 20% growth, we are thrilled. Oh wow! But if you look at China, they think big. They scale huge, big. That's where we have to change our attitudes and right at the top boardroom levels, which is missing today. We are happy at 30% growth. Let's grab it. What do I have to do? Put a small shed there, extend my shed here.
Correct.
But when China thinks, oh no, if I'm making say these steering wheels 20 per day, he'll talk of 20,000 per day. What do I have to do? Reskilling, new sheds, new capex, new technology. He thinks that big. But we are happy if I'm making 20 a day, if I get 30 a day, oh, wow, great job. Everyone's happy. So you have to think big and be ready for the change which we are looking for to make that so-called Atmanirbhar Bharat supporting the make in India.
Of that complacency.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well said. Yeah, Mr. Larry.
Yeah, just two things. I think one is that, this pandemic has taught us to be digital. And I think we need to make sure that we cascade it and down to the last level, we make people more comfortable with digital because there is a lot of digital interventions and interfaces in manufacturing that will be required. And we need to prepare our people for that. If I think being digital is nothing special, but it's way of life. I think our manpower will be significantly more in control of what we want them to do in the manufacturing plants. The second, I think what Sudhir has just said, in terms of the vision and in terms of the scale. So, as a country, I think we've taken the easy way out, so to say, in terms of going through our growth through the service segment, let's say. But manufacturing is usually considered more difficult or harder or dirtier or whichever way you want to call it. And then we need to change that vision to saying that we need to have a significant growth coming in from manufacturing. And unless we have that strength in our economy, we develop products which are of high quality. We have manufacturing units which have high productivity. And finally, our labor force has a customer centricity in terms of how that product is going to impact the eventual user, and therefore, coming back to quality. So I think it's a circle, and the cycle has to be understood well by our labor force, and it has to start from the boardroom. In terms of the vision that, many of our entrepreneurs think that as long as in Indian market we are surviving, we are good to go. But we need to benchmark it against global standards, and then only we'll reach somewhere. We may not still achieve the global standard, but we'll be significantly above in terms of our standards itself. And that's something which we must aim for.
Okay, that's correct. So we'll take just a couple of questions from the audience. The first question is, what is your suggestion for vendors in tier 2 or tier 3 or even tier 1 to become cost effective in today's scenario, and that too in the scenario where there is a heavy cost pressure as well as the more use of digital technologies, like I said earlier. So, who will answer? Mr. Guttu?
Again, one is the theoretical answer I can give you. Other is the practical answer. So let me give very briefly touch on both. Theoretical answer would be yes, look at digitization, Industry 4, process control, all those processes, excellence and all that stuff. But practical answer would be again, I believe for next 6 months, your costs will stay high. So you have to be ready to tighten your belts or whatever you have to do. 6 months, because as I said, sanitization and cost, social distancing is a cost. It slows down the line. Manish shared that, right? He has to shut the line 10 minutes early. So for the batch to leave in sequence and blah, blah. So all that will stay for at least for 6 months for sure, maybe more, hope not. So be ready for higher cost of productivity, but do the best you can in multi-skilling and giving more to a guy and all that which you can do 6 months. But long run, yes, you have to look at, as Arindam said, the Industry 4, or Pradeep was sharing about that 4.0, all that you have to deploy, and that's how you lower your cost and be ready to take on China or even make India the next China.
Right. Yeah, the next question is, as people will be wary of using public transport, don't you think there will be more use of personal vehicles? So will there be any big launches from all the OEMs, probably for more cheaper models, which can be affordable to many people? So, Mr. Manish, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I think we are too early for this scenario. I mean, way too early, because whether public transport or private transport, people will only go out if they have to go out.
Yeah, that's true.
So even personal transport will be very limited, and we are seeing. I mean, today, like we are working in the plant, so we know in the morning there is a rush, in the evening there is a rush, and that's it. In the daytime, the personal transports are very limited.
Right.
So at least for next, later part of this year, I don't see that happening. Yes, next year, and this will all depend on how the vaccine develops, how the anti-COVID treatment develops, because a lot of things depends on that. The confidence will only come when we have a sure shot answer to this situation. The rest all is incremental. So immediate seeing demand increasing, or let's say personal vehicle wanting to go higher, I do not see that as an immediate situation coming. But yes, 12 months down the line, 9 months down the line, there will be a situation where people will want to have maybe a sharing or a personal transport more to public transport.
Okay. Fine. There are a few more questions, but I think due to interest of time, we'll have to stop it here. So I thank each one of you for your interesting thoughts, observations, and also recommendations in the current scenario. It was a good assembly of all of you, like Mr. Manish from the manufacturing, Mr. Guttu from the manufacturing services, Mr. Larry from the skill upgradation, and Dr. Chatterjee from the technology part. So it was an interactive and interesting discussion. I think I'm sure the people will get a value out of this. And so thank you for your valuable time and making the discussion very interesting. I will now pass it on to Willie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. That was indeed a very engaging panel discussion. Thank you, Mr. Jitkar, and thank you all the esteemed panelists for the engaging discussion. Now our summit will be coming to a close. So if you could all just give me 1 minute, please. I just have a bit of just 1 minute. So ladies and gentlemen, this summit overall indeed did teach us a lot, like from the things that have changed majorly, started like shared mobility and going and how employee morale is very important as business leaders need to understand about safety of workers and also keeping their morale high. So I think we got a lot of perspectives over here, and that's only because of our really efficient speakers and panelists. So I would really thank all of you for that. So I'd like to thank all our speakers, our panel speakers, and also I would like to thank Automotive Skills Development Council, ASDC, and a special thanks to Mr. Arindam Lahiri, CEO ASDC, for accepting our invitation to partner with us in this summit. We'd also like to thank Flare Systems, our summit sponsor, and summit chairman, Mr. M.M. Singh, the director, Maruti Center of Excellence, and former CEO, Maruti Suzuki India, and summit co-chairman, Mr. Ramashankar Pandey, managing director, Hella India Lighting. And thank you all our attendees, of course, for attending today's summit, and we hope it will add value to you and your organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.